I saw what I saw, and I can't take that out of my mind.
December 1980. The airspace of a U.S. military base is invaded by UFOs over several nights.
I was thinking at the time, is this a warning? Is this an attempt to communicate?
Among the dozens of witnesses, high-ranking Air Force officers.
These are military people trained to observe.
Once sworn to secrecy, they're now ready to talk.
I walked around it. I felt it.
Almost immediately, critical evidence disappears. A cover-up begins amid claims of brainwashing and intimidation.
They said bullets are cheap.
But the cover-up can't stop civilians from coming forward to corroborate the sightings.
It was gone. It was just incredible, wasn't it?
A top-secret memo confirming the events unleashes a firestorm.
This was an official United States Air Force document talking about a structured metallic craft.
And amazingly, part of the encounter is captured on audio tape.
There's no doubt about it. This is weird.
Now, for the first time ever, the Sci-Fi Channel brings together eyewitnesses and scientists to investigate the case. New witnesses go on the record for the first time.
It was like a pulsating eye.
The truth about what happened in Rendlesham Forest.
The Rendlesham Forest incident is bigger than Roswell.
Could well change what you believe about UFOs.
This here is an official U.S. Air Force investigation, and we got put in a world of
I'm Bryant Gumbel. Join me as the Sci-Fi Channel investigates the world's best documented UFO encounter, the invasion at Rendlesham.
It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way.
This may be the most shocking story you've never heard. In December of 1980, UFOs allegedly invaded the airspace of 2 U.S. air bases in England. Even more shocking, airmen stationed there observed the events, but were powerless to do anything about them. The British and U.S. governments claimed nothing of defense significance had occurred. But now a Sci-Fi Channel investigation has assembled credible witnesses, physical evidence, and newly declassified documents which tell a very different story. The Rendlesham Forest case is one with explosive implications. Uncovering the truth of what really happened there could finally reveal why UFOs are one of the most closely guarded secrets of the modern age.
I have gone on record as saying that Rendlesham might be some sort of turning point in history. I think, but it may be that if any one case leads to an explanation for the UFO phenomenon, this case might be it.
The government have the idea that if they disclose the fact that there are physical objects with maximum performance which we can't match, people would get in a panic.
I think our government owes the men who were involved in this. They owe them not just an explanation, but some compensation for what they suffered.
This was a cover-up, you know? Why was this a cover-up? So for the first time, we're starting to get somewhere.
This could lead to chaos, in my opinion. I think there are very good reasons for the cover-up.
December 2002. Britain's Ministry of Defense releases 180 pages of documents related to the Rendlesham Forest UFO incidents. Included in those pages are claims of extraterrestrial encounters, men in black, brainwashing, and accusations of a government cover-up of epic proportions.
We never talked about it. Once we were debriefed, we never talked about it with anyone.
I was told specifically not to say anything about it. You're not to tell anybody on base. She said you don't tell your wife about it. You don't talk about it around your daughter. You don't talk around about anybody. And that's what I did.
I learned after the fact, secondhand, that there were some pretty intense interrogations, is the best way to put it, of several of the young airmen, at least 3 or 4 of them. And I personally think that 2 of them were affected, and still are to this day, by some of the techniques that were used to extract information or discuss things with them.
And there were a lot of people on this base that violated people's human rights, including mine.
where there was mind control attempts for whatever agenda put on people, and this is all in 24 hours to 48 hours after the incident.
But why would any government agency employ such extreme measures to cover up evidence of UFOs?
The problem is thousands of people have top secret clearance. When a subject is very sensitive, it needs to be further restricted, further compartmentalized, and that's when you get what calls to above top secret. And the UFO subject falls within that category, and it has since 1947 at least.
In many ways, the Rendlesham Forest UFO encounters of 1980 are eerily similar to events that shook the small town of Roswell, New Mexico, back in July of 1947. It was there, in the middle of the arid New Mexico desert, that an alien spacecraft reportedly crashed, only to have its wreckage and, some say, crew recovered by the U.S. Army. In the cases of both Roswell and Rendlesham, crucial evidence disappeared. Decorated military officers were forced to change their stories, and countless lives were changed forever.
Whatever happened at Roswell, it's now over 50 years old, and the number of primary witnesses who are still alive and able to give testimony is very small. Whereas the Rendlesham Forest incident, we have many witnesses who were directly involved in these events who are happy to go on the record. In strictly evidential terms, this case is bigger than Roswell.
Journalist Georgina Bruni spent years interviewing countless Rendlesham eyewitnesses for her book, You Can't Tell the People.
This is a case with so much evidence. It's just amazing. You've got military witnesses here, commanders, colonels. You've got, of course, Colonel Holt's memorandum. You've got his tape recording that he made on the night.
Flashlight's off. There's something very, very strange.
And also now we've got the photographs of the landing site. And of course on top of that you've got the witness statements from just after the incident. I mean, there is an abundance of evidence here to say that something happened.
The Kecksburg, Pennsylvania investigation utilized science and key eyewitness testimony to reveal a smoking gun, possible proof that something either landed or crashed in rural Pennsylvania in 1965.
Something happened in 1965 or thereabout. Something that was very abrupt that reduced the growth of the tree, and it's reflected in the narrower rings that occurred after that time.
As compelling as the Kecksburg case may be, Sci-Fi's companion investigation across the Atlantic in Rendlesham Forest turned up what many believe to be the best proof yet that an extraterrestrial spacecraft or spacecrafts did land outside 2 U.S. air bases in December of 1980, and that the British and U.S. governments have engaged in a massive cover-up of the entire incident. Now, for the first time, Sci-Fi moves beyond the gossip and half-truths that have surrounded the case for 23 years. Sci-Fi will track down new witnesses, reconstruct and revisit the actual sites with senior Air Force officers, and for the first time ever, show controversial footage that could be the key to unlocking the Rendlesham Forest mystery. The story begins in rural Suffolk, an area known for its dark and mysterious history.
It's one thing to focus on the UFO incident, but I always say to people, look at the background to the area. You know, possibly this has something to do with that case.
Suffolk, East Anglia is about 70 miles or so northeast of London. It is an area with a darker and more subdued military test history. Mustard gas and the like were worked out in that area during World War I.
The whole east coast of England in that area for decades was used for military weapons research, radar research, all sorts of strange tales from the Second World War about villages being evacuated because of secret experiments involving death rays and burned bodies found on the beaches and things like this.
Not far from this area, separated by a tiny slice of Rendlesham Forest, lie two key military installations. So close together, they're called the twin bases. Bentwaters and Woodbridge served as British installations until 1951, when they were leased to the United States. In 1980, the twin bases ranked among the most important U.S. military outposts in the world. More than 1,000 planes and some 4,000 Air Force personnel stood ready to defend or attack as necessary. Reliable reports have recently revealed that the bases even house tactical nuclear weapons that could be used to thwart potential Soviet aggression. While writing his book on the Rendlesham events, Left at East Gate, author Peter Robbins spent years researching the history of Bentwaters and Woodbridge.
The secret of the bases was that Bentwaters and Woodbridge were the home of a huge amount of nuclear ordnance in violation of our then existing treaty with the United Kingdom.
Colonel Charles Halt and Sergeant Jim Peniston are two of the key witnesses in the Rendlesham case. Even today, the topic of nuclear weapons remains a sensitive subject. I know you're not at liberty to either confirm or deny the existence of tactical nuclear weapons at the base where you served. Nonetheless, it's widely believed there were as many as 500 tactical nuclear weapons at that base. When you reported what you saw, did you also report that the craft seemed to take a particular interest in any particular area?
I'm not sure I want to comment on that.
I don't know if I can
it's very
comment.
difficult to comment on.
Now, officially, we didn't have nuclear weapons, but that's what we were trained to do, was secure the ordnance.
The men assigned the duty of keeping Bentwaters, Woodbridge, and its weaponry secure were Air Force Security Police. These highly trained men made up the core group of witnesses for the Rendlesham incidents.
I think that most of the witnesses that I've interviewed have been very honest because, you know, I've interviewed them over and over again. I mean, they have accused me of interrogating them. I think that Jim Peniston is an amazing witness.
Sergeant Jim Peniston's primary job at Bentwaters was to protect the base from terrorists and saboteurs, be it a Soviet invasion or a lost nuclear weapon. Peniston and his fellow airmen were trained to handle any situation that arose.
The job of the security policeman on these bases was to make sure that the integrity of the base was secure. You got to be able to tell by just the silhouette any type of aircraft, NATO, Warsaw Pack, and we were trained on that routinely, sometimes monthly. There was no aircraft that I could not identify at that point in time.
In the early morning hours of December 27, 1980, Jim Peniston received word of a possible aircraft crash in Rendlesham Forest.
I got a radio call from Central Security Control that says to 1012 their office, which is to phone in the office immediately. And I asked Sergeant Coffey, I said, well, what's going on? He said, well, you need to get out the East Gate right away. I said, well, what's the problem? He said, I'd rather not talk to you about that on the phone. So I put everything down and off I went.
The veteran airman headed out into the dark woods, unaware that he was about to confront a situation that defied any earthly explanation. When UFO invasion at Rendlesham returns, hard physical evidence of the Rendlesham UFO. Two Air Force officers risk their reputations and pensions to solve a UFO case many believe is bigger than Roswell. And later, never-before-seen video that could blow the lid off the Rendlesham incident. UFO invasion at Rendlesham will return. December 1980. Over a three-night period, numerous U.S. airmen encounter unexplained lights in a metallic craft outside two American air bases located in Suffolk, England. Almost immediately, U.S. military officials erect a stony wall of silence around the incidents, igniting claims of a cover-up.
It was clamped down, and it was compartmentalized, and that's how the Air Force works and the military works. What one guy knows, they don't talk about it to other guys. If you're not maintaining your oath and secrecy, you've broken rank.
The consequences of being a public UFO witness especially in a military context, has more than a military cost, a social cost. It has a very human cost.
Whether it's Roswell, Kecksburg, or Rendlesham, convincing military witnesses to go on the record has been extremely difficult. The reasons range from national security oaths to fears of ridicule, imprisonment, or worse. But one top man has spoken out. Lord Peter Hill Norton, Britain's former Admiral of the Fleet. He believes Charles Halt, Jim Penniston, and others encountered an otherworldly craft.
These are military people. They are, by their very definition, experts at spotting military facts. I don't see any reason why any of them should have made up one word of their testimony about what happened.
The outspoken Hill Norton is the highest-ranking military figure in the world to go on the record about the Rendlesham case.
In America, the equivalent would be maybe a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, someone like Colin Powell, actually coming out and stating in public that he believes in UFOs and he believes they may be extraterrestrial. It's that important.
Something actually landed, and I don't think there can be any doubt about that. I would be very surprised indeed if there were not official documents somewhere hidden which will explain that something did land, but would be very surprised indeed if anybody knew what it was.
The only official U.S. document that's been released is the Halt Memo. Written in January of 1981, 2 weeks after the incidents occurred, by then Bentwaters Woodbridge Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. The memo details multiple UFO encounters.
I put together sort of a, how shall I say, cleaned up version of what happened. I called it Unexplained Lights.
Even in its sanitized form, the Halt Memo graphically described extremely unusual phenomena.
Early in the morning, December 27th, saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object described as being metallic in appearance, triangular in shape, 2 to 3 meters across the base. And as the patrolman approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. Signed, Charles I. Halt, Lieutenant Colonel, USAF, Deputy Base Commander.
I waited several weeks after I made the memo, and nothing seemed to happen, so I put the file away.
While the memo is considered by many to be definitive proof of the bizarre events that befell Halt and numerous other airmen in Rendlesham Forest, it is only the tip of the iceberg. There are many questions still to be answered. What were those unexplained lights? Why did they invade the airspace of 2 bases that house nuclear weapons? And why is the U.S. government trying to cover up what really happened? As part of its latest investigation, the Sci-Fi Channel flew Sergeant Jim Penniston and Colonel Charles Halt 5,000 miles back to Rendlesham Forest.
Hello, Jim.
For Halt and Penniston, Rendlesham Forest is a crime scene of sorts. Aided by environmental scientist Patrick Davison of Mayer Environmental, they will reconstruct the events of late December 1980. The hope is that the 2 airmen can lead Davison to the exact landing site, where he'll test for residual radiation.
We initially thought that this was an aircraft crash, at least I did. Unfortunately, everything changed about 10 minutes into the investigation, and that's why you're here.
We've got a Geiger counter for measuring gamma radiation and also a gamma spectrometer.
If radiation is still present, it could provide evidence that a craft or crafts landed in Rendlesham Forest.
We certainly could have used that the night we were out in the forest.
We've got a little bit of a jaunt here. Not too bad.
Jim Penniston's search for answers to this mystery won't be easy. Much has changed in Rendlesham Forest since December of 1980.
The air temperature was 32 degrees. It was clear, crisp night. We drove down this.
Penniston was accompanied by Sergeant John Burroughs and Airman First Class Edward Cabansag, who'd been transferred to Bentwaters only a few days prior.
As we were heading out, I thought this was a prank. I thought, okay, 3-4 days on with my flight, there's a big, huge mud puddle out here, and they're going to throw me in the mud. As we got closer and closer, and I could see the intensity on both the other gentlemen's face, I knew that this was really going to be something more involved than a prank.
Real was pretty hard because everything was frozen. The other problem we were having, and it's inherent of the area, is we were having a dampening effect on the radios, meaning the radio was breaking up.
It's like the closer we would get to it, we would lose communication with Central Security Control.
To this day, Peniston remains certain he handled the situation exactly by the book. And I'm not a military guy, so forgive me. But if I go out in the woods and I see something that is that strange, I don't stand there for 45 minutes and take pictures and notes. I go for reinforcements in a hurry.
Okay, good question. What we did is we each had interbase radios, so I had people set up as relays for the radio. We were in constant contact to a point, so during those 45 minutes, even though I wasn't receiving, didn't really mean a lot to me, but I still went and transmitted. I have to report what's going on. We outside the installation and with the resources around that base, I better be reporting every 5 minutes, or they're going to send somebody else out there. And I did not want anybody out there until I could ascertain what was in front of me.
His flight chief was actually at the back gate relaying and monitoring this whole thing, and it would have been incumbent upon him to make the decision to up channel, to call for help, call for 30 and 30, which means a lot of armed troops immediately.
So in other words, yours was standard operating procedure?
He operated within the parameters he should have.
There was some distortion on the perception of time. The time out there seemed to go awful fast. 30, 45 minutes felt like 2 or 3 minutes. At this point in time, I realized it wasn't an aircraft crash. It wasn't getting the smell of fuel burning. Job was identify, get the facts, report the facts, and let somebody else make the assessment. I had my notebook out, and I was taking notes.
Jim Peniston has brought a key piece of evidence back with him to Rendlesham Forest. His original notebook from the night that he encountered an unidentifiable craft.
Description of what was going on was larger white light glowing.
Burroughs would say, do you see that? Do you see what's out there at the edge of the trees? And I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm going, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? And then he extended his finger out, put my head to his end of his finger. Look at the end of my finger. It was moving left, right, and it had blue, white, yellow lights.
Approximately 10-15 meters from it, it was quite distinguishable. It was triangular in shape. It was not an aircraft, but it was a craft of some sort.